Hello, this is Mark signing on with Skinny E Media. I'm here to present one of my favorite idols in music, Mr. Rob Garza, who just released his album Daydream Accelerator, and which I think is a phenomenal piece of work and definitely has the sort of 80s influences here and there of electro clash and sometimes post-punk and new wave. How do you do yourself?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Yeah. And right now I'm on the road with Thievery, and it's kind of a lot of things going on. And the new album Daydream Accelerator just dropped last month, so it's been pretty a crazy time with COVID and everything, and traveling and moving around. But it's been fun and enjoyable.
I'm very glad to hear that because the work that you have been doing has been very important and powerful, not just on a sort of sonic level, but also on community influences as well. And we have a few questions in mind. Hopefully, it won't take too much of your time with the 1980s influences in Daydream Accelerator, which I think is commendable. Now, certain songs had certain influences, I thought, like Tangerine Dream, which I heard on Ocean Morning Echoes, or Joy Division with The Summer Is Ours, and even Duran Duran with Can't Kill Me. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a big, I grew up really being influenced by music first as a kid during the 80s. I was going up from about 10 to 20, those are kind of like peak years in terms of soaking everything sonically like a sponge. And, during that time, I thought it was just such an amazing time for music, especially synthesizers were introduced a lot more, and you had a lot of just different cross-pollination with a lot of different styles, with the whole sort of post-punk, punk, new wave, things like hip hop coming on the scene, a lot of, dance music and things. At that time, it just seemed like things were kind of, your ears and mind were open, and things were just sort of seeping in. So there are a lot of different influences on a lot of these songs, and that era was a big influence on this album.
Childhood always influences the sort of things that you make later in your career, even if it's film, it's television or music. And I remember seeing interviews of Clash being referenced a lot as well in your influences, and I definitely saw that because Combat Rock, great album. My father loved that one. Had the melange of influences as well, so I think that's commendable.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, the Clash for sure. Like, if you listen to Combat Rock or even Sandinista, just the way that they're basically, sort of genre hopping through all these different styles and things like that. And, for me, I think that was eye-opening at a time when, you're kind of like, oh, musically, you can kind of go anywhere on an album or a piece of work. And, that's kind of one thing that has sort of been a constant, whether it's with Thievery or this album, Daydream Accelerator.
Understood there. I would definitely agree with that assessment there. And I know there was also a music video that existed for The Summer Is Ours. I noticed you had a little cameo here and there of trying to escape in a camionette, which I thought was pretty hilarious. But I definitely got dystopian vibes from it. Mad Max almost meets The Postman, that Kevin Costner film that no one's seen. With that being said, however, did you come up with the music video idea because of the pandemic? Everything's going to, excuse my French, SHIT, or was it for something else?
No, well, basically, me and Casey, his name's Yesik, that's his artist name, from Enemy Planes, we wrote the song during the height of the pandemic, and we were just kind of imagining, San Francisco was just like really quiet and nothing was happening, and we're just imagining like what would happen, when things open up again, during the summer, and we were just kind of on the sort of dystopian, sort of nihilistic sort of thing, like summer is ours, let's throw it away, like let's just have an incredible, just letting go sort of vibe about the whole thing. And so there's this tongue-in-cheek element in that video, the the world is sort of ending around them, but they just kind of, see each other or whatever. And it's kind of like, it's it's just, it captures that vibe a bit. And they asked me to be in the video at the last minute, which I wasn't expecting. So that was kind of funny too. So.
Some of my favorite bands are off to put themselves in their music videos as well. I know, I think it was like Aphex Twin. He always puts his disturbing little face on something.
Yeah, window liquor.
Oh yes, let's not go into that one there. That one's a bit too wild. Or Bent, Simon Mills, Nail Toller. They've appeared on some of their own stuff, like Swollen and Magic Love. I'm into a lot of trip hop and electronic groups, but this one here, Garza and Thievery Corp, definitely defy genre classification, and I think that's the charm of it. To where you can even have yourself a gin and tonic and a Pimm's on a nice evening in an airport lounge before you board your plane to SFO or LGW, London Gatwick. Sorry, that's just me going a bit off tangent. But getting back to instrumentation, your choice of instruments, do you use more like Moogs or Roland and Korgs for the synthesizers, and software like Ableton or Cubase?
I use basically Ableton as a software, and then a lot of this album was actually done in the box. I'm a fan of synthesizers and things like that, but a lot of times I'll just be traveling around with my laptop or something and just kind of coming up with sketches, and then just kind of, you can really start to just play with sounds and just kind of take them to, just being like, I'm not a purist in terms of like, oh, it has to be like an old, vintage synthesizer or anything like that. Like, I love that, but, not everything has to be created that way. And just all of the power, the, computational power when it comes to being able to do all of this great music on an airplane sometimes. I'll sit there. There's some songs that I've done the whole thing, like just, on an 8-hour flight. So, I'm not too precious when it comes to, I have to record this way. And, I'm just kind of open to, if I'm in a room with a bunch of vintage synths, and I'll definitely, go down that rabbit hole.
Well, you just even inspired me on my end because, like you, I've also done a lot of music on the go as well. Damon Albarn from Gorillaz and Blur, in his later years, he did a lot of his stuff mobile, not particularly on Ableton or Cubase, but GarageBand, which I have here, which I think is a very useful software, just like Logic. Create your own sounds here and there. Even though it's synthesized and you don't have to pay for studio sessions and instrumentation, I think it's absolutely wonderful what technology can do for the creation of music and sounds. And there's an innate charm about it, that it's 21st century, but also at the same time, it's also convenient, because I know for you and Thievery, there's a large library of sounds to offer from various genres and styles, which I think is the ultimate charm of it. And I know it seems like I'm jumping on questions back and forth, but just being respectful for time purposes, we'll say with the pandemic, I know it's been very difficult for everyone, I'm sure for musicians, because most revenue comes from touring, because album sales have not been as strong because of Spotify, Apple Music and whatnot. I'm sure you probably even had to work at another job, you don't have to say which one, when a lot of this all happened, lockdowns.
I mean, for me, we have such a big catalog of music. Fortunately, I've never, had to do any other jobs. I've only done music since I've been 25, and I'm 51 now professionally. So I spent the pandemic, I have a 11-year-old son, so I got a lot of quality time with him and just like really enjoying my dad and being in place for, the majority of the time, which is something that I haven't, I haven't had the ability to be in one place like that ever since, probably I was like 24 years old. So I, just kind of counted it as a blessing. It is great to be back on the road, and it is great to see faces of people just really blown away and inspired by what you're doing, and having that ability to go out and connect with the audience is like an incredible feeling, especially coming, after a pandemic type situation. So, but yeah, just try to kind of, count your blessings in whatever type of situation you're in, I guess.
I totally understand. I can relate to that. I know I was going on a creative binge myself during a lot of the pandemic as well, with making music and also scripts. Sometimes the most unexpected things for your work comes from the most unexpected sources of inspiration. I'm sure, like your family, like you said, has definitely probably influenced your music and some of your work to some degree as well. You even are now working on a soundtrack or score for Tetris mobile app game, if I'm correct.
Yeah, so I did that. So people over there that were working on Tetris asked me if I wanted to create a piece of music, and it is, I guess, having a 11-year-old kid around, you're kind of a little bit more aware of video games and kids and youth and things like that. So I, jumped at the opportunity. So.
Well, I'm sure he'll definitely get a kick out of it with the do
Yeah.
do 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 do.
Yeah, well,
Right.
it's not like it's more like a deep house sort of. They asked me like what kind of imagery I wanted, and it was like some UFOs, mushrooms, and psychedelics, and things like that. So it's a different take on Tetris.
Well, it almost sounds like you're going the Osric Tentacles, Pink Floyd avenue of things, which I think is very clever.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe, maybe not. That's pretty much your take on that. I know with one of the songs on the album, Letting Go, it even reminded me a lot of a modern 90s tune called Gabrielle or Gabriel by Roy Davis Jr. and Pevin Everett. Did you ever work with him to some degree? Because I think Roy Davis Jr. was a popular name in sort of house music in Chicago.
Yeah, no, I never had a chance to work with him. That song, the singer on that is a guy named Steve Downs, who worked with a band out of Germany, or act out of Germany, I should say, called Lovebirds. And that song to me kind of has a little bit of like almost like a Human League type vibe as well on that track. But Steve is, he's from Dublin. He's a great singer. And that one just sort of came together at the last minute on the album. I was just like, oh, maybe there should be like another song on here. So just kind of whipped something up, and that's kind of like what happened.
Well, if anything, tell him for my kind regards that it was my favorite song on the particular album, aside from Ocean Morning Echoes. It is definitely one to vibe out here on, well, they're not Bose swans, but if they were Bose, I would feel like I'm in an eternal bliss. I feel complete in my life. And with, oh, yeah, certainly let him know there. Genre-wise, I know the 80s influences is there, but how would you feel if someone tried to pigeonhole a lot of your music either through Garza or Thievery Corp as just being trip hop or down tempo? Because like I said earlier on, it defies classification, really.
Yeah.
I almost think they just put the electronica thing for marketing.
Yeah. I mean, everything's electronic music at this point. I mean, people record country music albums on software, so I mean, technically you could say that that's electronic music, but not really. Just the fact that it's done with computers, which back in the day, if you made music on computers, that was enough to be considered electronic music. But yeah, I mean, people say it's down tempo or trip hop or whatever, that can be very one-dimensional, and especially if you come to see some of the shows, because there's just so many different styles and performers and singers from all over the world. And it is very multi-dimensional, and it is it touches a lot of different musical places on the map. So so yeah, it is tough to but people always want simplistic ways to describe things.
That I totally understand. They probably don't listen to music as much as a fan or myself probably does. I know they had that problem with Kruder und Dorfmeister, who I remember on the interview you said you were really influenced by with their DJ Kicks compilations. But I hear you and Kruder and Dorfmeister and Tosca and a lot of those types of groups as jazz. Am I wrong to approach it that way? Because I can listen to sounds from the Thievery hi-fi and I'm almost reminding me of like Miles Davis or 1990s Ninja Tune stuff by Funky Porcini and Cold Car. I'm just like,
yeah. Well, there's definitely just a lot of jazz influences. I mean, when we were first forming Thievery Corporation, we were hanging out in a lot of clubs, played jazz and around a lot of jazz musicians, and we were influenced by a lot of other styles too, like bossa nova and sort of stuff that mixed like Indian music with jazz and things like that as well. So that was definitely sort of the musical influence as well as the stylistic influence too.
I would definitely agree with that. I know some of the work you did, but you had the record label 18th Street Lounge. I don't know if it's still in the works anymore or it's been folded.
We have it as a label, but we're not putting out too much on it right now. So
okay then, because I remember reading somewhere it said like the official office in DC for 18th Street said we're closed. Was it because of the pandemic or just like it wasn't making money?
That was before the pandemic. Well, you might be talking about the lounge itself because the lounge just closed during the pandemic. And so there are two things. There's the record label, 18th Street Lounge Music, and then there's 18th Street Lounge. And I think you're talking about the lounge. It just closed during this pandemic. And yeah, that's sort of like it was a Washington, DC institution culturally. So, it was sad to see that go, but I haven't really been in DC much for the past like 10 years. So, but I'm gonna have to start moving here in a second because they're texting me.
All right then. Well, no worries. I could give you at least one more question in regards to this one's a bit funny in regards to the album itself. If it goes on the top 40, which I hope it does, do you have a weird feeling that Billie Eilish or Katy Perry might even call you lads to say, hey, come on board? Because you guys need a bigger profile. More people should hear about you.
You never know who you're going to wind up working with. One of the singers, Emmeline, she had a thing that just blew up, which is doing pretty well. Just being in sort of these musical, spending a lot of time in Los Angeles, tend to rub shoulders with a lot of different people. So you never know who might walk in the studio one day and you might collaborate with. I think last week it was like in the number 60 in the college charts, the album. So that's pretty good to see.
Pretty reasonable there. And just my last one for you before you leave.
Yep.
With the studio sessions, I know you've done the synthesizer stuff remotely, but did you do a lot of the work in the vocals remotely by telephone or Zoom calls?
No, that was all pretty much in the studio. Being there, I was present, except for one song, which started as Calica. She was in the studio with these producers that I work with in LA, and they pulled up one of the tracks that I had, and she heard it and liked it and started just singing over it. And I heard it like a week later, and I was like, oh, this sounds really good. Let's keep, working. So that's kind of how that evolved. But in general, yeah, there wasn't really any sending, or except for Steve, because Steve was in Ireland. He had a baby. And so he's sitting there with two kids and he's like writing songs and, recording into, his computer, sending me stuff. And then he finally went to a studio there in Ireland and sent me back the finished vocals.
Okay, then. Thanks for the curiosity there. I know you have to get going soon, but it's been very nice talking to you, Mr. Garza. We'll talk next time, and hopefully I can see you at Belly Up Tavern in Solana Beach again.
Yeah, stop by. I think going to be in San Diego in December.
Okay, I'll definitely keep my ear out this Christmas time. My favorite song, by the way, from Thievery is Treasures, in case anyone asks. And also, don't set your car on fire, just like the Daydream Accelerator album cover.
Okay.
Until then, peace.
Take care. Peace. Bye.